Well, welcome once again, and thank you for joining us. And let me just say again that I always appreciate whatever reactions or comments or questions you might have, that you definitely have a place in on the YouTube page to post comments and questions. So feel free to do that. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen and we'll make our bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Thank you. We're going to continue now, of course, with this narrative, which actually represents the major part of Chayyei Sarah in this successful attempt to find a suitable wife for Isaac. So here we are. At this point, Eliezer is still engaging with Rebecca. She has just given him and his camels water to drink, and he has given her gifts, and now he continues. Vayomer, and he said, Bat mi'at, he said, whose daughter are you? Hagidi na li. Again, the na I've mentioned is a expression of please. That's how we translate it in English. Please tell me whose daughter you are. Another question. Hayesh beit avicha makom. Within your father's house, is there place, makom, lanu lalin, for us to lodge? Actually, or lodging for us, as Rashi is going to explain. In other words, the la here means more for than to. So, is there a place for us for lodging? As I said, Rashi is going to look at that, at the grammar of this. So let's go down here. Vayomer, he said, Bat mi'at, whose daughter are you? La'achar shinatan la sha'ala. After, the point that he's making here is that you notice that he gave her the gifts first, and then he asked her the question, right? So it says, after he gave her, he asked her. Lefi, because shahaya batuach, he was secure, he was certain, bizchuto shel Avraham, in Abraham's merit. He was certain that Abraham had that kind of worthiness, shehitzliach HaKadosh Baruch Hu darcho, that the Holy One, blessed be He, would cause his way to succeed. Lalin. So now he goes into the word lalin, as I said. Lina achat. He says lin, right? This word lin means one night's stay. One night's stay. Lin shem davar. The word lin is a noun. Is there a question there? I'm hearing some sounds. Does somebody have a question?
Yeah, why one night stay? I mean, weren't they supposed to stay longer? I mean,
Well,
why they traveled so far?
yes, good question. And the answer is that he didn't want to be an imposition, that he realized, that he was imposing on people, and so he wanted to ask for the least he needed. So we'll see how she
And
responds.
maybe hoping that there was more
Yeah,
shoot, I lost the word. Hospitality
yeah,
involved with this. That
right.
maybe, they'll stay a couple of weeks, we'd love to have you.
That's right. But you don't ask, you don't want to sound greedy.
No, absolutely not.
Right.
That's,
It's already an imposition to say, do you have place for us to stay? Imagine someone coming to you and saying, "Hey, can we stay over at your place?" Ask yourself, is that an imposition? Okay. But Vehi Amra, but she said to him, Lalun, Lalun. And he says, Lalun Kamalinot would refer to a longer place. So lalun would be a verb. Lin is a noun. Lun is to lodge. So it's confusing What's underneath, I believe, Rashi's question is this lamed in front of the word, which can mean either two or four, right? And if it means four, then it's a noun. And if it's two, it's a verb. And so in the second case, where there's this slight difference, right? Look at how he's looking at clues. I've mentioned this before, that it's almost like detective work, right? That you look for tiny little changes that tend to tell you what's going on and tell you a bigger story than those tiny little changes which people would tend to overlook. So anyway, so she said, Lalun, Kamalinot. We're talking about staying for a whole bunch of nights. So Rashi anticipated your question, Harlan. I think that shows you're on the right track. Okay, what was bothering you was bothering Rashi too. And he found the answer. So here we go. Vatomer elav. She said to him, Bat Betuel Anochi, I am the daughter of Betuel, Ben Milcah, the son of Milcah, Asher Yalda leNachor, whom she bore to Nachor. In other words, Betuel was the son of Nachor and Milcah.
Nachor was a brother of Abraham?
Correct. You got it. He was. So notice it says here, Bat Betuel. She says, the daughter of Betuel. Remember, how many questions did he ask her? He asked her two unrelated questions. He asked her who she was related to. That was question one. And then he asked her if there was possibly room for him to lodge for one night. Anyway, Hashivato al Rishon Rishon, va'al Acharon Acharon. And he just points out, Rashi just points out, that she answered his first question first and his second question last. That she thought through, she answered both questions in the order they were given. Perhaps there's more to that than we're saying, but certainly saying, I'm paying attention, right? And then she says, Vatomer elav, and she said to him, Gam teven, gam mispo. So we have grain would be teven, something like that, grain. Gam mispo, we have fodder. Rav imanu, much. We have much grain and fodder with us. Gam makom lalun. And notice here, right? She's saying lalun and not lalin. Even space to lodge.
Are they rich or are they just middle class? I don't get it. That's a lot of space.
Well, we'll have to do whatever.
All those camels.
Yeah, we'll have to try and infer it from the answer. Okay, I suspect they were well off enough if they had all the fodder, and that would mean also quite possibly that they had lots of animals too, and in some ways, of course, one's wealth was measured in the size of your flocks. So again, on occasion, Rashi will pull out a word that is not that common and analyze it. And here we go, mispo, not a common word. So he explains, kol ma'achal hagmalim, any kind of food that camels eat, right? Karui mispo is called mispo. Excuse me. Kagon tevel, like straw, usaorim, and barley. So he's saying that's considered the food that camels will eat. Fodder.
Camel chow.
There we go. I love it. Very good. Yes. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Okay. Going on. Got some stuff here. Right. Vayikod ha'ish, the man bowed. Vayishtachu la'Hashem, or he knelt. Maybe we could translate that, right? He knelt, and the man knelt, and he bowed before God. Right? I mean, he is saying to himself, "Wow, Dayenu." But remember, he had think back. He had prayed. We didn't do it this year, but before, when we were studying this, we had read about this prayer that he had said to God when he arrived, right, at the well, and how he prayed to God because he needed some way to know that he was successful. And God had answered his prayer, word for word, as it were. Okay. Vayomer, here we go. Vayomer, Baruch Hashem Elokei Adoni Avraham. Baruch is the Lord, the God of my master Abraham. It's a beautiful prayer, actually, when you think about it. I'll keep translating it for this. Asher lo azav chasto, who did not withhold his grace, v'amito, and his truth, me'im Adoni, from my Lord, from my master. And he's saying this to her as he's saying this acknowledgement. So perhaps it's more of an acknowledgement than a prayer. Anochi v'derech nachani Hashem. I, in the way Hashem led me, Beit Achei Adoni, to the house of my master's brother. Right. Led me directly there. Let's see if we've got. Yeah. Baderech. So the point is here. I'm going to take it back here, please, and it says Baderech, Baderech, and it doesn't say B'derech. Right. So I'll let Rashi do the first explanation. So that is what Rashi is going to be pointing out here. That subtle distinction between Baderech, in the way, B'derech, in a way. Okay, so, Baderech. So he says, Derech ha-mezuman. In other words, the prepared way. Derech ha-yashar, the right way, the straight way. Be'oto derech shahayiti tzarich, in the very way I required. And that is the inference of using ba derech, is what Rashi's telling us. And now he's explaining the mechanics. V'chein, and similarly, kol beit v'lamed v'hei, any of these pronomials, prefixes, right? Not pronomial, I'm sorry. Any of these prefixes, beit, b, or lamed, la, and hey, the definite article, right? Ha-mishamshim, which are acting as utilities, utility letters, Barosh HaTeva, at the beginning of the word, Unetkudim b'patach, and they are pointed with a patach. And a patach is precisely the name of this vowel here. It's called a patach. And they're pointed with a patach. Midabrim b'davar hapashut. They are referring to something that is explicit. Sheniskar kvar, that was already mentioned, b'makom acher, in a different place. That's one possibility. Or shehu muvurar, or something that is clear, v'nikar, and recognized. Be'ezohu midaber. In someone else's speech. Something like that is what I believe that would mean, right? Or in whatever he's saying. So Rashi's explaining the use of the definite article, right? That the point of the definite article is to inform the listener, right, that it's being that whatever that word is that's being used, whether it's generally it's of course a noun, or even possibly a verb, if it's been used before, or it's recognized as something specific, right? So the definite article is referring to a specific, because it might, one might be talking in generalities, but here one is talking in specifics. So that's why he says it isn't just a way, it's the way. And talking about the way lets you reflect on what Rashi said at the very first part of his comment. Derech mezuman, the prepared way. Derech hayashar. So,
I have a question. I
sure.
don't understand. Abraham sends Isaac to his brother.
No,
But
not Isaac. So let me stop you right there, okay? He's not sending Isaac, he's sending Eliezer.
oh,
That may affect your
Eliezer.
question.
Yeah, Eliezer, right.
Okay.
And what I can't understand is they worship idols.
Yes, yes,
And
yes,
they didn't worship one God, and I don't understand it unless he didn't want Isaac to marry the Canaanites, but it wasn't that because of the idols; it's because of their morality. They were very bad people. So he sent the servant to get a wife for Isaac, but
yes,
they're worshiping idols still. I don't get that. They should be worshiping God.
yes. So that's a great question. Okay, it's a really good question. And the answer is that I think back then, generally speaking, one way to try and answer your question is that essentially this may be true amongst Native Americans as well, that generally speaking the woman would take on the religion of the man and the beliefs of the man, that the man
Oh,
was in fact head of the house and head of what went on there, and that that was the understanding. Now, the point you're making is very valid, and in fact, the king is told not to marry many, 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 many wives, and we read about King Solomon how and there's a reason given, and the reason is that they're going to turn his heart away from serving God, and but that's in a case of many, many. And the other piece, of course, is that we see, and maybe Harlan, you're bringing out a really, really good point, okay? And it supports a great story that's in Masechet Shabbat, which is, so let's assume now that Rebecca, of course, was living in a household, and by the way, we may get to it today about the fact that they did worship idols, okay? But the fact that Rebecca was such a wonderful person and such a compassionate person, and that she treated Eliezer, not only Eliezer, but his property as well, with such care and respect. And that may have been even more important. And I'll tell you that it supports one of my absolute favorite stories about the person who came to Hillel and was trying to mock him and said to him, "Teach me the entire Torah while I'm standing on one foot." And Hillel's response to him was, "Okay, go ahead and stand on one foot." And he proceeded to tell him, "What is hateful to you, don't do to your neighbor. The rest is commentary, go study."
yeah, that's right.
And so that's this particular little element and what you just brought out in it sort of supports that story very beautifully. Because the truth is this: you can claim or believe that you do not serve idols, but if you act in immoral ways, and if you act in ways that contravene what is hateful to you, don't do to your neighbor, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Because the truth is that if you do that, if you do treat your neighbor that way, I think it would be considered a chilul Hashem, which would be a desecration of God's name, because, and it works simply and very simply like this, that people know that you're a God believer and see you behaving that way and say, "Oh, that's the way God believers behave." So if you want to claim you really do believe in one God, and that's part of this, right? Because if we believe in one God, God isn't just my God, God is God of everyone. And if we believe that God, part of God's very existence is how much he loves me and cares about me, means the same about the entire universe, that God has that relationship. So your question is just wonderful, and in a sense is being answered here, at least in terms of an implication. And that's perhaps, again, you're giving us a better understanding now, Harlan, through your question, as to the deeper point of the story, as to why it plays out the way it does. And it isn't about belief, but about behavior. So it's a great point. So he's just told her about this, and this is her reaction. V'tarutz hana'ara. Notice again, running, right? We could sort of probably write an essay about how the implications of running in the Torah narrative, right? But he's just asked her for a favor, right? And she runs. Hana'ara, the young woman, ran v'taged leveit ima, and she reported it, she told it, into her mother's house, kidvarim ha'ela, according to these words, right? In other words, she was basically telling her mother what Eliezer had just told her. Okay, there's a Rashi on this. Leveit ima. So again, a detail, right? Why Dafka? It doesn't say her mother's house. What's it telling us? And Rashi simply says, Derech hanashim haita. It was the custom of women, lihiyot lahem bayit, for them to have a house, leishev bo, in which to reside, lemelachtan, to perform their work. Ve'ein habat magedet ela le'ima, and a daughter would only tell her mother. In other words, it was natural for the daughter to tell her mother. So again, I think possibly underneath here is suggesting that there was a level of modest behavior. In other words, that the women were separated in this home or house in which they did their work in order to prevent immorality from taking place.
Why didn't she tell her father?
Okay.
Also.
Okay, yeah, I hear you. So Harlan, I think that's the point that Rashi's making, is that the daughter felt more comfortable speaking to her mother about things first, at least first, okay? But the word gets out, okay? I mean, clearly the word gets out. So here we go, and now we have a little bit of foreshadowing and a little bit of an insight into a person's personality. We've given an insight into Rebecca's personality, and now we're going to get insight into someone else who's mishpacha. Ulrivka ach. Rivka had a brother, Ushmo Lavan, whose name was Laban. So Rivka had a brother by the name of Laban. Vayarotz Lavan el Haish, and the man ran to, and Lavan ran outside Hachutza. Okay, so I'll say, and Lavan ran to the man outside near the well. Okay, so again, interesting, right? We've got this hurrying up. Well, we know why Rebecca hurried, right? And the question is, we'll find out exactly what was Lavan's hurry. Okay.
Another question. The father is supposed to be the ruler of the family.
Yes.
Why didn't the father run out?
So let's well, first of all, I don't know that the father would be running, but that's a very good question, and we might get an answer to that a little later on. Okay? And I think that is a question that the commentators ask, and if I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure that Betuel was alive at that time. Okay? But we'll see.
Oh.
We'll see. Okay. But I think there's also another point. I don't necessarily know that we need to go to that answer. And I think we're going to find out in a little bit, maybe not today, as to why Lavan was the one and not his dad. Okay?
Okay.
So, all right. Let's see. Okay. So here we go. Vayarotz, right? He ran. Lama ratz v'alma ratz. So we're asking the question, why did he run? And what was he running about? What was his big hurry? Let's keep going. So now we may get the answer. Okay. Vayhi, it was, kirot et hanezim. So now we're going to get the reason. When he saw the nose ring, the et hatzmidim, and he saw the bangles, right? Al yadei achoto, on his sister's hands, right? The bracelets on his sister's hands. Ukeshomo et divrei Rivka achoto, and when he heard the words of Rivka his sister, Lamor, saying, Ko diber elai ha'ish. This is what the man told me. So this, as Rashi's going to tell us, was the reason why he was in such a hurry. And you understand.
Then he was greedy.
Precisely. And not just greedy, but greedy in a specific way. Vehine omed alagamim, and behold, the man was, and here he was, standing near the camels, al ha'ayin, near the well. Okay. So here we go. Okay. Vayhi kirot het hanezim. Amar, he thought to himself. Here's another example of the word amar as meaning think. Ashirhu, this man is wealthy. Zeh, this man. Venatan enav pamamon, and he set his eyes on the money, right, on the wealth. Al-hagamalim. So al can also mean on very often, okay, but it doesn't mean on here. It means leshomram. He was guarding the camels. That he was, okay, and that's, in other words, when it uses the preposition al to mean near the camels, it has that. It also has the understanding of for the sake of the camels, meaning to guard them. And he says above in chapter 18, Vahu omed alehem. This is Abraham, right, with the three strangers. And it says, and he, that's Abraham, was standing over them, l'shomshan, in order to serve them. In other words, for their sake. And we will stop here today. I'll put in the little marking. See where that is, if I've got it. Do that? Nope, I'm not seeing it. Okay, let me put that in right there. And remember, tomorrow the probability is that I am not going to be available tomorrow, and we'll meet on Thursday. If for some reason that changes, depends on my daughter's schedule, I will let you know. I will try and send you all a text or an email. But that's where we are today. I want to thank the people who are listening in, and just again invite you to share your thoughts or your questions. So, thank you. Moment.